What is the point of having success if you have no joy? If your growth, if your business, if anything is costing you your peace and your joy, it is too expensive. Success that costs you your joy is too expensive. Suddenly I said, God, you know what? I will be the best version of myself, whether I'm in a wheelchair or walking. I'm tired of being miserable, and I will be the best version of myself, and I will praise you and worship you regardless of my circumstances. From the minute I said to God, I'm going to be the best version of myself, it was like a light switch went off. And suddenly I realized what I could do. Well, didn't seem like much, but I could smile. And that smile impacted people. But more than impacting other people, it impacted me. And I shifted from that place of just having a smile to gratitude. Being so grateful that I could smile. And grateful for all the little things. And my life began to shift. And in that smile is where the joy began. There were so many people saying, you know, I'm not in a wheelchair, so how can I relate? And I came to the realization that there are so many people crippled by their mindset, crippled by their attitude. So what is holding you back? What is tying you down?
This is the Clark Connection Podcast, where 12 years of coaching championships meets real-world leadership. Coach Clark broke through at the highest levels. Now he's bringing you the playbook. Every week, real leaders, real wins. Real strategies you can use Monday morning. If you're done with theory and ready for results, this is your show. You in? Let's go!
And welcome back to the Clark Connection Podcast, where we talk leadership, personal development, and entrepreneurship to help you grow, lead, and win in every area of your life. I'm your host, Aaron Clark, aka The Coach, and today's episode is one that I think a lot of entrepreneurs, leaders, and high achievers desperately need to hear. Because let's be honest, there are a lot of people building success while quietly losing their joy. Today, we're talking about what it really looks like to build a business with kingdom impact, how to pursue purpose without burning yourself out, and why success that costs you your peace, your faith, and your joy is way too expensive. This conversation is powerful, practical, faith-filled, and honestly, a needed reminder for leaders who are carrying a lot right now. But before we jump in, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. The Clark Connection Podcast is powered by Coach Clark Leadership and Development. At Coach Clark Leadership and Development, we help businesses, churches, schools, and organizations develop strong leaders through leadership training, executive coaching, team building, and keynote speaking. Our mission is simple: help leaders grow so their people, teams, and organizations can too. To learn more about our services, visit CoachAClark.com. Quick question. If someone asked ChatGPT, Gemini, or Perplexity for the best company in your industry, would your business even be mentioned? More and more, customers aren't searching the way they used to. They're asking AI for recommendations. And if your business isn't showing up there, you're missing opportunities before people ever visit your website. That's where TrueScaler comes in. They specialized in generative engine optimization, or GEO, helping businesses become more visible across today's AI platforms like ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, and more. If you're ready to prepare your business for the future of search, visit TrueScaler.com and learn how GEO can help your business get found where customers are searching next. This episode of the Clark Connection Podcast is proudly brought to you by Hubbard Flooring Studio. Leadership, growth, and success all start with a strong foundation. And that's exactly what you'll find at Hubbard Flooring Studio. Vicki and her team help homeowners and businesses create spaces that combine quality, craftsmanship, and style. Whether you're updating a single room, remodeling your entire home, or finishing a new construction project. Hubbard Flooring Studio offers flooring solutions and custom blinds designed to bring both beauty and functionality to your space. If you're ready to work with a team that takes pride in getting the details right, visit hubbardflooringstudio.com or call 225-924-1582. Shout out to Steadfast Electric for supporting the show. With hurricane season here, now is the time to think about protecting your home and family. BJ and his team specialize in whole home generators that keep your lights on, your food cold, and your household running when the power goes out. Learn more at steadfastelectric.com or call 225-364-9218. I want to give a shout out to Dr. Bob Smith, chiropractic internist, for sponsoring today's episode. Dr. Bob focuses on identifying the root cause of pain and dysfunction, not just covering up symptoms. If your body isn't performing the way it should, this is the kind of care that looks deeper. Learn more at brspine.com or call 225-291-2626. Dr. Bob Smith, finding the root cause, not just chasing symptoms. A big thanks to Automate Integrate Professional Services for backing the show. Andrew helps businesses simplify, automate, and integrate their systems so leaders stop wasting time on manual work and start focusing on growth. Visit automate-integrate.com or email Andrew at automate-integrate.com. Automate Integrate, systems that work so you don't have to overwork. Sponsors, thanks once again for everything you do to make this show possible. Now, today's guest is Nikki Cruise, a kingdom business architect, joy coach, speaker, and entrepreneur who helps leaders align their business with God-given purpose while building systems and structures that actually preserve joy. Her story is incredible. From experiencing miraculous healing to helping other entrepreneurs transform the way they lead and build, Nikki brings perspective that blends faith, strategy, leadership, and personal growth in a really impactful way. In the episode, we talk about the difference between building with God versus building for God, why joy is actually a leadership strategy, how mindset affects everything, and what leaders can do to avoid burnout while pursuing a big vision. So whether you're an entrepreneur, a leader, creator, or someone just trying to figure out how to build a meaningful life, this episode is for you. So grab a pen, grab a pad. Here's our conversation with Nikki Cruise. And Nikki, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here, Aaron. It's always such fun being around you.
Yeah, I'm glad you're able to come on. I was telling everybody that you are this joy junkie and always just full of delight. But I gotta know, you say you're a kingdom business architect. Like, what is that?
Well, a kingdom business architect to help somebody build businesses that are going to impact the kingdom, but build them in a specific way, just like an architect designs real life buildings. I know I've never been a real architect in the practical sense, but we build businesses with structures and systems, just like an architect says, oh yes, this will work, that won't work. I build with people businesses that are going to have huge amounts of kingdom impact. So there's that other foreign word, kingdom. The kingdom of God is going to be impacted,
Yes,
and is going to create impact on the rest of the world through these businesses.
Oh, that's awesome. And so when you say you're helping them set up these systems and these procedures, like what do you mean by setting up systems and procedures?
So many people go into solopreneurship, entrepreneurship, and they put bits and pieces together from different areas they've learned. But an architect has an overall image of things. So it's actually aligning all those bits and pieces together on a firm foundation, because you can build everything you want. But if it's not built on a firm foundation, you got a problem. And we build on the foundation of aligning with your God-given purpose. God is that solid foundation.
Yeah. And down here in Louisiana, we build on all sorts of not so firm foundations all the time. You just got to like drive those pylons down and down and down and down.
Yeah, having recently been to Louisiana, I can believe that.
Well, I mean, I was trying to think of places that get more rain than we do. And, you know, like the Amazon rainforest is kind of like ahead of us. And I think Seattle, Washington has us beat, and maybe the UK, and that's about it.
I was about to say Seattle might do it, yeah. But you see, under all that rain, that's your temperature, that's your season. And under all that rain, there's got to be a firm foundation. Just the same for a business. It doesn't matter what the weather is, because your business is set to grow in that particular climate. But the foundation has to be solid, and the architecture of the business has to cater for the weather. You just gave me a perfect line there, Aaron.
Well, that's what I try to do. I just try to connect people with opportunities to make an impact wherever they go. And so we can wrap the show up now. We got all we need.
We got it all. We got it all there. But the one thing we haven't said is that my particular, and I might be jumping ahead of you here.
No, let's go.
My particular style of architecture has a very specific thing in mind. Every building that an architect designs is for a purpose. And the purpose of mine are to preserve the joy of those businesses, so that people build with systems, structures, and God to preserve the joy. Because what is the point of having success if you have no joy? And joy is twofold. Number one, joy is a reward, but joy is not just a reward. It is so much more. Joy is a strategy, and joy is a signal.
All right. So when you say you help them preserve joy, like how do you preserve joy?
You put systems and structures in place that are going to prevent burnout. Who's been burnt out? I think we all have at some point in our walk. And this is what led me into this. I went through a season where I was so excited. I was building my business and I was building it for God, and I was going to have this kingdom impact, and I was burnt out because I was building it for God, not with Him. And I lost my joy. And you cannot follow and keep going through with your passion and the passion of your purpose with no joy. And that's why the joy of the Lord is our strength, is because it actually empowers us to keep going. So if we are doing things where we don't have joy, it is both a signal that tells us something's out of alignment, something's wacko wrong. But the other thing that happens when we don't have joy is we just lose the strength.
Yeah. And so you'd said, and I missed what you'd said. I was started to write it down, but then I was like, well, I got to ask, what do you mean preserve joy? You said joy equals, what did you say? I don't remember. Strength.
The joy brings you the strength. The joy, you know that scripture, Nehemiah 8 verse 10, the joy of the Lord is your strength. Most people see that as an encouragement, but when you look at the context of it, the people were worn out and the people were grumbling. And God said, come back to me to find your joy. Basically, get back into alignment with the purpose that I've called you to, so that you can have the joy that will pull you further, because we don't like to push. We like people to be pulled and drawn in business. When you're pushing, it's hard work. You lose your joy because that's a heavy sweat, you know?
Yeah. And I like how you said it. You lost your joy because you were building it for God instead of with God. And so how do you help people do that? How do you help people make sure that they're building with God instead of doing it for God?
You know, God gave us all gifts and talents and skills. Even though we might think we've developed them, they come from God. And instead of us saying, okay, God, I've got all these things, I'm going to go and use them, We get to sit down, surrender, humble ourselves and say to God, which of these things do you want me to use in this season? And that comes from building a closer relationship with God. It comes from listening to him. I believe God is your CEO. And we often say that, and we say, oh yeah, God's the CEO of my business. Let me tell you, God is far more invested in you and your business than you ever will be. But you've got this guy, you've set up an office for him because you've said he's your CEO. So why every morning do you walk into the office and walk straight past his office without knocking on the door and saying, what do you think about this idea? And when we stop and wait on God, when we stop and look at what is bringing alignment into spaces, there's joy, there's passion, it's easy. And that's the one thing that very often as Christian entrepreneurs, as faith-centered entrepreneurs, we don't realize we are not in control. God is. We are partnering with him. And that's what makes it so easy. It's not about us. It's about God and the people we serve. And then we don't have to worry about where the next penny's coming from or the next client's coming from. We overthink it. Long answer to a short question.
Oh no, I thought it was wonderful because I love that you had said, how do you make sure you're building with God? Well, surrender it to God. And that's an interesting concept to think of, that God being the CEO of your business. And I know it's one you and I have talked about before multiple times, with, if you're learning about leadership and how to build a business, well, it talks about how to do that properly in the Bible. So dig in. And man, that's so true, how often we get outside of the will of God, because we, one of my mentors likes to call it, we often lack having the O committee in our lives, because the difference between a good idea and a God idea is one O. And so having that somebody to go, oh, Nikki, that's not a good idea.
And even if it's a good idea, it might not be the right season for it.
Might not be the God idea. You're right.
And if you don't ask God what his timing is for it, and people go, how do you ask God? It's really not a complicated thing. Hey, God, can you tell me what is the timing for this? It can be that simple. And then you listen. You will find the answers coming in different ways. But, the sheep know his voice, so they hear him. If you're not spending time with God, you don't hear him. If you don't spend time with that CEO, if you don't stop off in his office and ask his opinion, ask his guidance, when he does talk, you're not going to recognize that it's his voice. And seeing as God's ideas are kind of creative, you're probably going to think, way, that's off the wall. That must be totally wrong.
Oh, I do. I was about to say, I'm pretty sure I was the president of that club of ignoring whatever it was at some point, that doing my own thing. I'm pretty proficient at that. No, but I love it all. I love it all. And keeping that joy is making sure that you're walking with him to preserve that joy, finding strength in being in alignment with him. That's so beautifully said. If you're getting value from today's episode, take a second to like, follow, and subscribe to the Clark Connection podcast so you'll never miss a future conversation on leadership, growth, and success. Let's dive back into today's topic. And so what was it that got you into becoming the joy coach, the joy junkie that I've come to know and love, that everybody's going to come to know and love?
Well, I have an incredible, miraculous healing testimony, and that's what started the joy shift. And that was the beginning of the journey. And see, I was in a wheelchair for 11 years. And I wasn't just in a wheelchair. I was strapped into a wheelchair. I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't dress myself. I couldn't brush my hair. I would kind of beat my brains out because I had these seizure-like spasms and dystonia where my muscles distorted, which all came on as the trauma result of an asthma attack. And I thought it was going to go away as fast as it came on. But I had to be strapped into my wheelchair, could not use my hands, couldn't write, so certainly couldn't touch a computer or a cell phone. I would end up throwing it across the room. But you know what I could do? I could do scrambled eggs. Just give me a fork and a bowl and it was automatic. After 11 years, my doctor eventually turned around and said to me, "You'll never walk again. It's been too long." And in that moment, my entire world crashed. And I was mad at God because I had really believed God was going to heal me. And it's not that easy to be around somebody who has no control over their body. So I was kind of isolated, but God had been my best friend. He was the one that had always been there through everything. And there had been quite a lot of everything in those 11 years. And I was now mad with him, yelling and screaming at him. You know, when we get to, maybe none of you have been there, where you say, "I'm not talking to you because you don't exist." Or, you know, any of those things where we get mad with God. And I don't believe he minds. I think he minds if we get mad and don't talk to him. But after about 3.5 weeks of saying to him, "How can I be of any use in this stupid wheelchair? I'm worthless. I'm useless." I took on all the identity I believed the world believed of me. Suddenly I said, "God, you know what? I will be the best version of myself, whether I'm in a wheelchair or walking. I'm tired of being miserable, and I will be the best version of myself, and I will praise you and worship you regardless of my circumstances." And it was at that point that I realized, from before I walked into that doctor's office to when I walked out of that doctor's office, nothing physically changed. 2 things changed. Number 1, my focus, and number 2, my attitude. I took my eyes off God and his promises, and instead of being somebody who believed I was going to be healed, I was depressed and defeated and miserable. And from the minute I said to God, "I'm going to be the best version of myself," it was like a light switch went off. And suddenly I realized what I could do. Well, didn't seem like much, but I could smile. And that smile impacted people because of the circumstances I was in. But more than impacting other people, it impacted me. And I shifted from that place of just having a smile to gratitude, being so grateful that I could smile and grateful for all the little things. And my life began to shift. And in that smile is where the joy began.
So, all right, you said you got into a wheelchair from an asthma attack. Now, how did that happen? That's, to me, just wild.
It was wild. I've been a severe asthmatic all my life, and I have been hospitalized multiple times a year, up to that point, usually 4 or 5 times a year, because oral medication would not be effective. So my body had gone through this trauma over and over again. Now, at that stage, my husband and I were actually driving out somewhere. We were out on a Sunday drive. So we were near Berkeley. It's not Berkeley. Yes, it is Berkeley. And we went into Berkeley Hospital because I couldn't breathe. And I walked in and said, "I need some help." And they looked at me and said, "Okay, sit down." And I was blue around my face. I had a heart rate of over 200. And I was sitting there, basically waiting. And then they came to get me, and they said, "You need to go in there now." They jumped me through the queue. And this was unusual because my doctor wasn't at this hospital. This was not my local. Sorry, I was at Stanford. I went to Berkeley later. I was at Stanford and my doctor wasn't there. And when they could eventually get an IV in me, because I have veins that are collapsed from treatments before, I settled down and we thought everything was fine. My breathing went normal. My heart rate was still very high. And the next morning I stood up to use the restroom. We thought everything was fine. I just stayed overnight. And as I stood up, my limbs flew in every direction and the shaking started. My heart rate went nuts. The heart monitors went off. And unfortunately, it could never be definitively diagnosed because it affected all 4 quadrants of my body. Whereas a stress, a functional movement disorder, which is often a response to physical stress, usually only affects 2. So I have been to every place you could think of: UCLA, UCSF, UC Berkeley, UC, it exists, that I've been for tests. And there was nothing that showed, which means it was probably a trauma response. So I just thought, okay, well, whatever happened, it's going to undo as quickly. And 11 years later, I was still waiting for the quickly.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite the thing. So now, how long ago was that? Like when did that happen? And then, because I was kind of curious when you said you went to the doctor that said, okay, Nikki, you're never walking again.
That was, now I've got to add a few years here. That was 16 years ago. Okay, 16 years ago, I went into the wheelchair.
Okay, so 16 years ago. And then when did that happen? Or after, in that time frame?
5 years, just over 5 years ago now, because there's more to the story.
Okay. Now, I was about to say, because this is now that pretty cool and fascinating, that, hey, you were in the wheelchair so it was 11 years at that time when the doctor said you're not walking again.
Correct.
Okay.
And then I had my little temper tantrum with God for about 3.5 months. And then my life shifted. And just in that time of choosing joy, choosing gratitude, and hungering after God, God began to do the most incredible healing of my heart, of my spirit, of my mind. And being in my natural capacity, I was encouraging other people. I was leading other people, mainly because they looked and saw, well, okay, there's something about this joy thing here. And I could encourage other people. But I was still in that darn wheelchair because I had chosen to be the best version of myself regardless. And something really important I'd love to emphasize here is that I decided I was not going to be defined by my circumstances. And a lot of people agree with that. And they say, of course not. God defines you. And you know what? What God says about us in Scripture is not what defines us. It's what we believe and live out about what God says about us in Scripture. Because Scripture's all there. It says it. And if that's what defined us, we would all be wonderful. We've got to believe it. We've got to live it out.
A quick thank you to our premium sponsor, Hubbard Flooring Studio. Whether you're upgrading your floors, refreshing a room, or adding custom blinds to complete the look, Vicki and her team are committed to quality workmanship and exceptional service. Learn more at hubbardflooringstudio.com or call 225-924-1582. Let's get back to building better leaders. Absolutely. And I think that's an important thing that you said. You've controlled the 2 things that you can control: your actions and your attitude. And the funny thing is that the actions typically come from whatever you decide your attitude's going to be. Oh, man. And so now, what were you doing prior to going the wheelchair? So prior to the asthma attack, What is it that you were doing leading up to this?
Well, we had my husband came to the States on a work contract, and we had waited quite a long time to get our green cards. And once we got that, I opened a little store down in a mission village called San Juan Baptista, and it was a fair trade store where I was helping people share their crafts and their goods so that they could live above the poverty level. And my little store was like a little museum. We had all these things in that people handmade from recycled goods. So one man's trash was another man's treasure. And a lot of the principle behind fair trade is that people get paid fair value for their goods, not as little as you can pay them. And crafters in a lot of these countries, people just want to pay them as little as possible and appreciate the craft. So being in a place where I could teach people about fair trade and talk about these incredible things that were in my store. I mean, handbags made out of inner tire tubes that other people would throw away. Handbags made out of soda tops or plastic bags. There are so many recycled things that, people would strip down soda cans, and these are usually from impoverished areas. And it was such fun. It was like a ministry. And my husband kept saying, you've actually got to start selling stuff and stop just talking Jesus to people. But
I mean, why?
yeah. And so I had my store. I connected with a number of vendors throughout the world. I used some fair trade places and supported them. And then I had to stop because I was also very involved in my church and the children's church. I led the littlies, the pre-K in my children's church, because up until the time that I had my green card was 11 years. And I got to do things that didn't earn an income and kept me busy and out of mischief. So
I was about to say, and that's a good way to stay out of mischief, is to stay doing the Lord's work.
yes.
And so tell us what happened. So now you're not in a wheelchair.
Nope.
What happened? When did you get healed, like your miraculous healing?
Well, I was just coasting along saying to God, this life is awesome. You've given me a purpose and all the rest. And God was doing all this healing spiritually, emotionally. He was building me up. Even some past trauma he was healing. And suddenly one day, and all through this time, I realized, it's not our circumstances that trap us in. And there were so many other people saying, I'm not in a wheelchair, so how can I relate? And I came to the realization that there are so many people crippled by their mindset, crippled by their attitude. So what is holding you back? What is tying you down? You may not be in a physical wheelchair, but what is it up here that you believe? Is it your negative language? And having realized all of this, I was working really hard on drawing closer to God and personal development. And one day my husband parked me in front of the computer so that I could watch a church service on a Palm Sunday, evening service. And I was watching and I went in saying, God, I'm coming to you expectantly. I thought we were going to deal with some more of that self-condemnation because I'd yelled at him so badly. He had forgiven me. I just hadn't forgiven myself. And I could feel his presence. It wasn't a healing service. It was just a service, a Palm Sunday service. And this was 5 years ago. So it's basically 5 years, 1 month ago now. And afterwards, I went to the bathroom, had no automatic wheelchair because you can't really steer one like this. So went into the bathroom and ran my bath, little bath, because spasming backwards, you drown yourself. And I went to call my husband, reached back for my wheelchair, and it wasn't there. And what do we always do when something doesn't work? We blame ourselves. So I yelled out at myself, "Oh, darn it, you forgot to put the brakes on." And slowly I began looking over my shoulder. And I stood up straight. My wheelchair wasn't there. I took a few steps back to the corridor and to the lounge area where my hospital bed was. And there was my wheelchair. I'd actually walked to the bathroom without even realizing it. Instantaneous, miraculous healing had happened during that service.
Today's episode is brought to you by TrueScaler. Search is changing. Customers aren't using Google anymore. They're asking AI tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Perplexity for recommendations. TrueScaler helps businesses show up in those AI-generated answers through generative engine optimization, so your company is easier to discover when it matters most. Learn more at TrueScaler.com because the future of search is already here. Now back to the conversation. There's so much to unpack in there. It's crazy to think, you read about it all throughout the Bible about Jesus being able to just heal somebody just by their faith, and to see it happen nowadays is just amazing. But I love too that you said, because this is one that I really think that a lot of people don't realize is while they're not in a physical wheelchair, mentally they've put themselves in a wheelchair because of what they believe and what they're not willing to open their mind to be willing to learn, to reach out and learn and grow their leadership, to grow out in their faith, to grow out who they are as a person. Just so much could be unpacked and all of that. And so now doing joy coaching and how to have that positive attitude and frame of mind, like what was it that made you say from there, like, hey, I'm going to get started and do this?
As I was ministering to people, I was encouraging people. I'd never heard of coaching. Remember, I'd basically been under a rock or in a wheelchair for 11 years. I hadn't been on a computer, except if it was pulled up for movies or something. And a lot changes in 11 years. So, and somebody said to me, you should be a coach. And I suddenly heard about coaching, and I kind of listened in on a couple of coaching workshops and things. And I loved what they taught. I said, I'm not a coach. That's not my zone. That's not my lane. Well, God obviously had other ideas. I wanted to inspire people. I wanted people to have more of God in their lives. So I made these wonderful little inspired by God subscription boxes with little goodies they could use every month. And that took up fabulously well. I sold a whole 11 boxes, 11 subscriptions. And, I said, no, this isn't my thing. And then I suddenly realized I was doing it. It's what I was doing all day, every day. It's what I was passionate about. And if I wanted to earn an income, I either had to get to the stage where I let God give me the abundance He wanted me to have by turning this into my business. He's given us the ability to gain wealth in the areas He's called us to. So I began coaching and became certified, and I have a couple of certifications. I don't believe certifications are essential. I do believe they're good to have education and learning. And I started coaching people on joy and then on business in joy.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is because as I was giggling, you're like, I'm not a coach. So I don't do that. And I mean, everybody thinks, you got your ball cap on and your whistle and hey, stop doing that. Go do this. But, everybody, it's one that I preach, for lack of a better term, that all the time is everybody needs a coach, and not everybody needs me as a coach. I want everybody to have me as a coach, but let's be real honest. I'm not for everybody. Somebody, they may need what Nikki Cruise offers versus what I have. or vice versa. They may need to go with somebody else. And I think that's the beauty of it all, is that, and I think that's why we get along so well and just enjoy talking and running leadership and whatnot by each other, is because we realize that it's not a cookie cutter thing. What works for me won't work for you, but what works for my typical client is probably not going to work for your typical client.
And you bring up something so important. I've actually had clients who I've sent away, or they were about to be clients, and I've sent them somewhere else. Because as coaches or mentors, our job is to bring out the best in somebody. And we do them a disservice if we take them on if there's not alignment. And for those coaches out there, let me tell you, taking on a client simply for the paycheck is not worth it. Because if you're not aligned, usually that client that you wouldn't have chosen to serve otherwise is going to not fit in, is going to be it's going to be the thorn in your side or the pebble in your shoe. Not because there's something wrong with them, but because you're not wearing sandals for the pebble to flip out of. You get to honor who you are called to serve, and you get to honor the culture of the group that you're called to serve in. So do what's best for everybody and send people to the place where they're a good fit. Now, you don't just say, oh, no, I don't like you, you're going over there, because you might need to be working with that person. None of this is flippant. All of this takes prayer, thought, and the concept of understanding what are you called to as a leader? Because sometimes it can be hard. Doesn't mean you don't ever have a difficult client. Which brings me to the point that joy isn't the absence of pressure. People think, oh, well, if I have no, but joy is the presence of alignment. That's where the joy comes in.
And I was just about to ask that, so with all this, and now that you're this joyful person, do you ever have a bad day?
Oh, yes. Believe you me. And I sometimes say to people, I think that one of the things is that I recognize and understand that I get to choose joy because I've practiced it. Joy is like a muscle. You can exercise it. It gets stronger. And because I practice it, I get to choose it quicker. And other people will sit and not think, okay, joy's the answer here. The choice of joy is the answer. I tend to go to it quicker. And that, I think, is partially a gift from God and partially a muscle I've developed. Because God has given me an abundance of joy. But yeah, I have bad days. I have my days where I feel sorry for the people I'm talking to because I know I'm just miserable. And then you know what? I go back afterwards, and instead of beating myself up, I receive the grace that God has extended me, because God has given me that grace and I get to give it to myself, but not without looking and questioning, how could I have done better?
I want to take our relationship to the next level. Let's become social media friends. Follow me at Coach Clark Leadership, and let's keep the conversation going in between episodes. Now let's get back to the connection.
What do I do now to get the joy back? Because if you sweep it under the rug or just say, oh, no, that was awful, you lose the joy again. And joy is a signal. If joy's going out the window, stop and examine why. You can hear I get passionate about joy.
Absolutely. And it's like you said, it's a muscle. It's something that you practice. I mean, whether we're talking about if you're going to go run a race, that you've got to work those muscles out, that it's a mindset. It's something that you can choose to do every single day, no matter whether you're having a good or bad day. And I think that's what a lot of people are so scared of, and why they're fearful of leading or what have you, is, what happens when I mess up? Because they've got this crazy idea that you, as the boss or the leader or whoever's at the top, has to be this perfect person. And it's just like, no, we all mess up. own those mistakes, and then show the people that are following you how to go the right direction. What do you do when you mess up? That's more important than, hey, this is how you constantly be great. What happens when you fall off? Show them that.
And, that is the thing. People think that these things we go through are character flaws. If a leader's stressed, they think it's a character flaw. No, it's not. I'll tell you what I think. As a kingdom business architect, I'll tell you what I think stress is. It's a structural flaw. It's not a character flaw. You're building something that isn't sustaining you. And this is where joy is. It's a muscle. It's a reward. It's a strategy. It's a signal that is telling you something is wrong. Joy is so much that if you are letting joy sit clouded in your life, you're losing a lot of the direction, because you never lose joy. It's inside you, but it does get clouded over. And you get to go and address those things that are clouding it, so that your joy or lack of joy is telling you something. It's telling you where you're out of alignment. It's telling you, gee, I really don't like doing this. Well, then why are you doing it? Yes, there are some tasks you need to do. But if that becomes a recurring question, your joy or lack thereof is telling you something. It's a signal.
So good, so good, so good. All right. So as we're kind of winding down, getting to time, one of my favorite things to ask everybody is, Nikki, I believe that all leaders are readers. Not all readers are leaders, but leaders are learners. They're constantly learning and working on developing who they are so they can help the people that they serve. So what's one book that you would recommend all leaders read?
Well, as you know, I'm going to say is the Bible. However, if that's not what you want to read.
Such a good church answer, Nikki. Such a good church answer.
Yeah. But if that's not what you want to read, there are so many. I would suggest you read someone who you enjoy and relate to. And I love Miles Monroe. I'm not a big reader. I'm a great listener. I like to listen, so I do a lot of audible, but I also don't read full books. I sometimes read and get a strength of a message, and then I'm drawn to another book, and I find that they complement each other. And then I go back. But Miles Monroe wrote so many books on kingdom leadership, the purpose, the power of leadership, finding your purpose. And he just has a really dynamic, different way that he expresses it that I really draw to.
Oh, that's good stuff. Good stuff. Now, what about, because I always enjoy learning as well. Like, what is it that you may be currently reading or currently learning and working on?
Oh, I tell you, anything and everything that brings growth. But I get that from Myron Golden. And, I listen to a lot of his YouTube stuff, and it's never on just one thing or another thing. And when you see how he laughs and jokes around, of course he brings joy. But he's a go-to for me.
It's all just so, it's so good, everything that Myron does. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard him give a presentation or a speech where it was like, yeah, I didn't listen to that one again.
Never. Yeah.
Oh, man. Oh, yes. And then the last question that I ask everybody, that is, what's one thing or one question that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
Oh, there are so many. One of the questions I often hear is, how do you know? How do you know whether it's joy or not? Or how do you know where you're aligned? And how do you know where to walk away? And I'll tell you, if your growth, if your business, if anything is costing you your peace and your joy, it is too expensive. Success that costs you your joy is too expensive, because I do not believe that God gave us a purpose so that we could burn out living it out. And when we have joy, the reason why I believe in joy is that I want to make a ripple effect in the world. If I can put a smile on one person's face, that will have an impact on other people as well.
Whew, man. I know I told everybody before they got on here that to make sure they had a pen and paper ready. I hope y'all took a bunch of notes, because I mean, I'm over here scribbling away, but that's like the perfect thing to end it on. If it cost you your peace and your joy, it's too expensive. Man. Now, Nikki, if anybody wants to reach out and connect with you, how do people reach out and connect with you?
Well, there are a number of ways. You'll find me all over Facebook as Nikki Cruise, Cruise. Yes, like the cross and the switchblade guy, just spelled differently. Or you can get hold of me at support@joy-inspired.com, or you can go and look up my podcast, the Joy Inspired Podcast. And it's Joy-Inspired.
And look, guys, that's going to all be in the description below. I don't want to make it too hard for you. That it's going to be there. And I was about to say, she has wonderful guests on her podcast as well. Nikki, I appreciate you coming on here and just sharing your story, your experience, and how to find the joy with all of us.
Thank you so much for having me, Aaron. And anywhere I can go and slosh a whole lot of joy around, I love to do it. So thank you for letting me do it here.
It was my pleasure. Glad that we'll definitely be having you back on. I know me and you're going to collaborate on a whole lot of other stuff. So you'll be seeing a whole lot more of her as well, guys. All right. Thanks, Nikki.
Thanks, Aaron.
Man, what a conversation. I think one of the biggest things that I took away from this is that success means absolutely nothing if you lose the joy that you had getting there. So many of us leaders are chasing bigger numbers, bigger platforms, bigger opportunities, but they're exhausted, disconnected, and running on empty behind the scenes. I just love Nikki's perspective that joy isn't a feeling. It's a strategy. It's something you intentionally protect while you build. And honestly, I think it's a message that more entrepreneurs need to hear. So you don't have to destroy your peace to fulfill your purpose. You don't have to sacrifice your family, your health, your faith just to say you're successful. And you definitely don't have to build alone. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you connect with Nikki. Check out her Joy Inspired podcast and share this episode with somebody who needs to be reminded of this today. And as always, if this episode brought value to you, make sure you subscribe, leave us a review, and share the Clark Connection podcast with someone in your circle. And if you have questions, make sure you fill out that Google form below, because we answer those live every Monday on Ask the Coach. And remember, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. So keep leading, keep learning, keep connecting. I'll see you on the next episode of Clark Connection Podcast. Thanks for listening to the Clark Connection Podcast. If today's episode added value to you, do me a favor, follow the show and share it with someone who needs it. You can connect with me at my website, CoachAClark.com, or on social media at Coach A. Clark. All the links are in the description. Until next time, keep leading, keep growing, and keep connecting.